Breaking news from Rochester's northeast side. A tense scene following a deadly shooting today. One man was killed, a woman seriously injured. Very emotional crime scene. His family members showed up just after their loved one was shot to death. Police say the victim in his 30s died. A woman was shot but is expected to be okay. Police say they were shot in a parked car on North Clinton. The car was targeted. Patrice Walsh at the scene now to tell us more. Patrice?
And Don, as you can tell right now, this part of North Clinton has now reopened. It was closed for 5 hours after that shooting, which happened at 12:30 in the afternoon. Police tell us an officer heard those shots, responded, and saw people running. It was then he discovered the victim in the car and the woman down the street. And those screams, you hear the screams from the mother of the man that was killed, as well as the brother, both arriving on the scene after learning he had been killed. Police having to hold them back, called in the clergy on patrol and Pathways to Peace to help calm the family down. Neighbors say this is shocking.
I pray for the family, whatever. I could send all my condolences to them because this is just heartbreaking. Like no parent should have to hear about their child being killed and then to violence like this.
I can't imagine getting a call like this that a loved one's deceased. Very upsetting. We have clergy response down here, Pathways to Peace, our FAST office. We certainly understand how hard it is on a family to go through something like this. So we're really trying to give them the encouragement and the support they need while still maintaining the crime scene so that we can find who did this and get a conviction.
And again, police being very sensitive with the family members of that victim. Again, this part of North Clinton is now back open. Police still searching for a suspect. And we don't know yet the identification of the man that was killed or the woman that was shot. Reporting live on North Clinton Avenue, Patrice Walsh, 13 WHAM News.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Today, I got a guest on that's kind of from my community. She lived in an area where, when I was a kid, we'd be like, that's where the rich people live, And her life ends up taking a different course. And she ends up in the city of Rochester, which we've talked about plenty of times. Eventually, she's with her kid's father, who ends up getting shot and killed. And she's also shot. But she's got a hell of a story of redemption, getting her life back together. Sam, tell the people who you are, where you're from, and talk a little bit about you.
Hey, thanks, Chad, for having me on. Sam, so yeah, I went to Pittsford, Sutherland, and growing up, I'd say that I had pretty good life. I was really into the sports, skiing and tennis. High school was good. I got straight A's, and for a while things were good. My mother suffered with alcoholism, so we got that genetic role there, which plays a big part in everything. So it's unfortunate, but especially for my children, I know I worry about them. But I'd say I tore my ACL this twice. The second time, kind of, I feel like is what led to me starting to take a different turn in my life. I don't think that the Vicodin necessarily led me there. I just think it didn't help. And it was really the friend group. There's a bunch of things that happened in that period of my life where I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how to handle like things that were happening to me. I can go on about different things, but really I got into drugs, and even though I knew all about addiction, it didn't stop me. So it's just like I almost didn't care. Like I knew that kind of in the beginning that I was an addict, or I don't really remember what I thought about it, but I just started trying all sorts of different drugs and drinking. I drank a lot in college, but I got into heroin even right after graduating high school.
So you got into the heroin thing after high school, not during high school? Yeah,
right at probably the summer after I graduated, I think.
I mean, that's something that usually doesn't happen in the neighborhood that you're from, right?
No, I mean, there were quite a few kids from my school that did get into it. I think, not quite a few, but, there's a few of them that got into it. And I think we got into we were kind of in that group together. And a lot of those kids are dead now. I think, I don't know, everyone, but of course, a lot of the people that I've met, have died over the years. So.
I mean, that's crazy, right? We see, I remember being in prison and I seen this People magazine article and they had all these kids in there that had overdosed, had all their pictures. And I was just like, wow, this stuff's really, hitting people, hitting communities. And in my mind, I'm like, and I'm, not on no racial stuff, but I'm looking and it's like all these young white kids, they're all dying from overdosing. I mean, back then when you got into that, what was the motivating factor? Was it because of your injuries? You were chasing away the pain? How did it start?
Yeah, I really think it does have a lot to do with emotions and not wanting. I was in a lot of pain and I didn't know how to talk about it. We had, a hard time communicating in my family, just because it didn't really come naturally to us to talk about like really serious stuff. We still talked about it, but I don't think I was ever really familiar with how I felt myself in order to, express it and deal with it in a healthy way. I was just trying to escape. I did lose who I was, and I lost any, significance in my life, I guess. And, and then after that, I think, even all sorts of drugs just take such a toll on your brain and your mental health, and you're not coping with it right to begin with. And then, your brain, the channels in your brain are changing, especially at a young age. So.
How were you supporting your habit at the time?
So I did work at the Coal Tower, which is a restaurant in Pittsburgh, a little diner. I worked there since I was 15. I worked there, so I had a lot of money saved up before I really got into my addiction, and it didn't last long, obviously. And once I ran out of money, I would say I was leaving for college. So it kind of was just bouncing back and forth with, in college I wasn't using because of the change of location. And then I come home and I had, enough money to get through, a college break. But at the end of it, I only went through 2 years of college before, taking it downward spiral. So.
Let me ask you this, right? Eventually your father finds out you're using drugs. What's his initial reaction?
I feel like if I think about how I was as a teenager, I was a good kid up until these things happened, but if I think about how I treated my dad and, I don't know really how painful that was for him. He had just dealt with, enabling my mom and her addiction. He was really sick of it. He did go to Al-Anon, so I think he had some support there. And that's where right in the beginning with him, he, had a very hands-off. He didn't want to enable me. I think it was for his own protection in a way. Like it's hard, especially with heroin addiction. I mean, I've heard him, say, my scariest fear is coming home and finding you dead. So I don't think I really cared enough about them when I guess I just didn't care.
I mean, that's understandable. I mean, that addiction kind of makes you not really care about anything except for the addiction, right? Mm-hmm. I know you're getting a little bit upset, so I don't want to upset you. But, this is the reality. There's a lot of kids out here who are using drugs and not understanding, like, hey, your decisions are also affecting your parents, right? Mm-hmm. And eventually, I'm happy that you're at the point in your life where now you can look back and reflect, like, look what I was doing to my parents, look what I was doing to my family. And, I know that you're on the right course right now. And I hope that you continue to stay there. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. A girl from Pittsburgh doesn't usually end up in the city of Rochester. And eventually you end up in the city of Rochester. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you end up, being in Pittsburgh mm-hmm. to going to Rochester? I mean, I can imagine that it's the, cop or whatever. But, tell me how that happens.
Yeah, I think in that, being in, using drugs and being in the city, it's so easy for things to take a really dark turn. When your addiction gets to the point where, you're running out of money, you turn into I wouldn't say like an animal. You turn into the only way you can survive is to get that drug. And I think when I'm sober, I'm a very capable person. I work hard and all that. But when you add drugs to it, you will do anything to get that. So it takes someone who had, potentially a very bright future and leads them to the street. And I ended up there because I lost my job. I was out of money. I was sick and, dope sick. And I ended up in the city trying to figure out how to get money. And somebody kind of set me up that I was with, that I knew from, I knew from, high school sort of. He kind of set me up and I ended up in a house with a guy who sold women and kind of locked in there in the house. And he kind of took me to New York City.
Hold on, I want to stop you before we get to that, him locking you in the house.
Yeah.
Thing. For people that don't know, where we're from, I would think like, Pittsburgh, these kids these white girls can't come here. They'd be scared to death. Mm-hmm. Were you scared? And I don't mean, how you ended up there and later on or whatever, but when you first went to the city, what was your first, were you going there to cop the first time you went to the city? It wasn't the time when when they lock you in a room, and we'll get to that in a minute, but
yeah,
you were going to the city to cop, right?
Yeah, I guess through other people who were using and knew where to go. It was always ended up really in the city. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people selling, around my area. So it ended up in the city and, know someone who knows somebody. And then, you get their number and then you're meeting them. And
were you scared to go there?
See, I think just some of my own ignorance, I wasn't aware of. I mean, not that I wasn't aware, but I guess I thought these things wouldn't happen to me, or I'm just going in there to cop and I'm coming home. But it does take. I mean, there were a couple points in there where I was really like, "Wow, this is bad." Oh.
I mean, there's I'm from, like I said, I'm from Ghost Town, right? Mm-hmm. So Lyle, Dewey, J Street, Broad. I grew up on Broad and Saxton for many, many years of my life. But there's neighborhoods in the city where I'm like, right now, I'm like, man, I ain't going over there. And back then, there'd be like times I wouldn't go over there unless I, had something on me, mm-hmm. and, to protect myself or whatever. So that's why I'm just like, I guess I'm shocked to a certain extent that, these white kids come from Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Like I said, not on no racial stuff, but it's just not what you see. Mm-hmm. White kids from Pittsburgh. Usually you'll send someone to go get it. But then you get to the point where you're like, you know what? He's tapping the bags. I'm going myself. I mean, is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. If you do go in the suburbs, you find people making a lot more money selling it way more expensively. And I think some of these white suburban kids are kind of naive and cocky, maybe. I don't, they just don't really know what it's like to actually live there.
So eventually you were talking about, you go to the city, continue with that and what happens, and you end up getting taken to New York City and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So he hadn't kind of padlocked. It was hard to get out. I was stuck in this addiction, cycle of downward spiral where I didn't have any other means to turn to. I ended up in this New York City for a few days, selling myself. He was supposed to be giving me the money that I was making. And I would find out later, he was just keeping everything for himself.
First, you said that he had locked you in an apartment in Rochester, right? Yeah.
He was in a house on Norton, I think. But yeah. So I did try to get out numerous times. I got in physical altercations with him, trying to get out. Trying to be like, this is not what you told me it would be like. And he was very. Definitely didn't care about anybody's lives for that matter.
So when you're locked in this house, I mean, are you afraid like, holy shit, am I ever going to make it out of here?
Yeah, I think I was just so desperate to get that drug and to not feel that I was I guess that was kind of covering up, how real it was. I was scared. I mean, I think I had. It's kind of hard to remember everything, but I think I had gotten out of this house before I went to New York City, and I ran, I was running away, sort of, and I don't know how he found me again, but he found me again on the street and, brought me back. I was, in the bushes. It's kind of hard to remember the details on that, but, yeah, it was scary, and he was not a nice person, and, yeah, so I'm glad that I wasn't there for longer and that I got out, but.
And eventually he takes you to New York City, you said, right? Mm-hmm. What's it like for you in New York City?
Yeah, so in New York City, I was just basically working the whole time I was there. This other girl was kind of one that drew me into with him, and she was just like his drawing girls in, trying to make them feel safe in order to use them. So she didn't care. So, but she was trying to act like a friend, and so I was with her. So it wasn't, I don't even know how to explain her, but it really was just business. And we came back, I guess.
So you come back. Now, when you get back from New York City, what happens?
So I came back and really realized, what this guy was doing. Like, he was really not giving me any of the money. He was just giving me like a little bit of drugs, so I wasn't sick. It was ridiculous. So, and before I hadn't been able to get out. I didn't have a phone. He had given me like, because he only had heroin, and I used heroin and coke together most of the time. So he'd given me $10 to get coke. So I was telling him that I was just getting, because he didn't have any, I was getting it from somebody. And I called who ended up being my daughter's father to come pick me up. And because I told him I was, getting that, I was able to get out of the house. And then I left with him.
So he's kind of like the dealer, and you call him up and you're like, hey, look, come get me. Yeah.
I mean, I had met him maybe shortly before this, and he kind of knew that I was starting to do that because I had lost all, I didn't have any money. I told him I was trying, to get more money, and then I told him what happened, and he just had me. So I had some relationship with him already. So I ended up just staying at his house from there on out, and he didn't, luckily I didn't have to do that or go back to, end up with that guy again.
So I mean, when you're and eventually you have a child with this guy, right? Mm-hmm. What was he doing? Did he have you working? Did he not want you doing that stuff? I mean, what was the relationship like?
Yeah, so he was a little different than most of the people out there. I don't think they really care about, junkies per se. I mean, I think maybe that's why some Black people don't use heroin, is because they see what it does to these white people who are so desperate to get drugs. And like, it's really, really kind of a horrific nightmare seeing these women or, guys like so desperate. And I think they don't want to be like that either. I don't know, that's kind of how I thought about it. But he was a little different. He wanted me to be sober. So, he was like kind of helping my habit out a little bit for a while. And then I did get sober when I was with him. And then, being around that, he's selling it. I would stay sober for like 6 months and then, start using again. I eventually started working at Sticky Lips as a waitress and was still staying with him.
I mean, when you two are together, though, is he talking about he's going to quit selling drugs? He wants you to be sober. You guys are going to have a life together. I mean, are those the conversations that are going on?
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't know what I was really thinking about with the rest of my life. I mean, that's all he knew growing up, and he did talk about not wanting to do that, especially when I got pregnant, and I kind of knew, like, how does he get out of that life? He doesn't know anything else. He's never really worked because he's always made better money doing that. But he did talk about not wanting to do that. He seemed to, he didn't really want to be out there killing people with it, but he was still all that he ended up doing. So
was he a violent dude?
I think that he was, and then he was trying not to be. I mean, it's more like just us getting in a fight sometimes that it would, turn more violent. But it really, to be honest, it was really me being a punk, or, I don't know if my drugs turned me into like a little kid, and I'm selfish. And
I don't mean violent towards you. I mean just violent in the community. Was he violent among other drug dealers? Did he carry a gun? I mean, what type of dude was he?
Oh, no, so we didn't carry a gun anywhere around. He did have a shotgun in the house. He was, so that's why the whole thing was kind of shocking, because he kept to himself. He's a very quiet guy. He just kind of did his own little thing, didn't really bother anybody. Yeah, he wasn't, I think maybe he got into fights when he was younger, like physical, fights, but.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Sam. When you were a little girl, what did Sam want to do with her life? What did you used to dream? I'm going to be. What was it?
I don't know. I wanted to do something that I really liked doing, and that I felt successful. I loved competition. So I'm in sales now. That helps me, to drive me, and I like to be the best. And I think when I'm committed, I have, I put everything into what I'm doing. So I think I could have been, things could have been a lot different for me.
What did you want to be, though? I mean, when you're little, you dream of being a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, or what did you used to dream of?
Well, so there was a lot of lawyers in my family. The doctor thing, I kind of thought, I was just like, no. I wanted to do something that I really, really enjoyed, and I wasn't really sure what that was. So when I went to college, I was doing environmental science because I was thinking this is going to be big, as the years go on, and I wanted to do environmental law. I thought that with just my personality and stuff that I could be good at law.
Yeah. And then, like we talked about your addiction, right? You're caught up in this addiction. You're caught up in this life. Rochester is a dangerous place. Eventually you get shot, and we'll get there in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what were some of the most scariest times for you when you were out there on the street?
Well, it definitely, like I said, you end up doing anything for that drug, and I don't think anybody likes to feel like that, feel that desperate. But there was, quite a few times where, someone I was with, got jumped. We all got beat up. I got beat up. He got all his basically almost killed, but got all his teeth knocked out. And then there was another time that these two black guys were, they were supposed to be giving me something because I had given them money, and they were just taking it and kind of like, whatever, just take your money. So I was like, I went back up to them. I was like, give me that. And they took like a beer bottle and were about to smack me in the head with it. And then there's another time I
Let me stop you for a minute. They're going to smack you in the head with a beer bottle for how much money?
$10 maybe.
Over $10, they want to hit you with a beer bottle. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the person you just talked about getting his teeth knocked out. Was that your kid's father?
No, that was when I was in Plattsburgh. So it's a guy that when I started using up there, and my father came to get me. He was where I was finding drugs, and he got made some bad decisions and ended up putting us in a really bad spot where I knew that the guys that did it to us really kind of were in a predicament where, like, what do I do with this situation? Do I kill him because he's going to go, tell on me? But I was there, so I don't think they wanted to kill both of us. So I told him I was leaving. You don't have to worry about me.
And you were talking about a third incident before I interrupted you. What was that?
So this, I don't know exactly when it was, but I was walking to Walt's house, and somebody kind of came up to me and was like offering if I wanted to do sexual stuff for him for, some drugs. And I ended up, I said, no, I'm good. I kept walking. And I think, in my opinion, he was upset that, like, I turned him down, like you, kind of thing, like you turning me down kind of thing is kind of the impression that I got. And so he grabbed me by the hair and dragged me into the house and put a gun to my head. Wow.
I mean, was there ever a point when these things happen where you're like, this has got to end. I got to go home. I got to call my dad. This guy's putting a gun to your head. Do you ever call your dad like, look, just come get me. I'm done.
Yeah, I think that's the insanity, I think, of it all, and why I do want to be a different person and want to help other people, because when you're there, your drug addiction, you're not thinking right at all. I mean, my dad would say after I got shot that, and when I went back out and I was just off the rails because of everything that just happened, it was like the next morning, that drug addiction really has no limit or no sanity to it whatsoever. So, yeah, I think.
So your drug addiction puts you in a position where it's like balls to the wall. Whatever happens, happens, but I need to get high today.
Yeah. I think that's how, a lot of people are, and even more so. I mean, the drug is just killing them enough as it is. I mean.
So I think you're on the east side, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Clinton Avenue area?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you're over on Clinton Avenue area, and eventually your kid's father gets shot and he gets killed, but you're there. Tell us what happens. I mean, are you guys out partying? Are you out hanging out? Are they trying to rob you? I mean, what happens? And how does this happen where he ends up dead?
Yeah, so this was 6 years ago. So it was the last 5 years in the city. I mean, it's just the shootings have really, really increased. I think even the cops told me they're afraid to go in there. I think so. Like it was middle of a day. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning, sunny in September, we had gone to a little bodega to get cigarettes, or he had a lottery ticket problems. So he was getting lottery tickets, and we were just sitting in the car right next to, on Clinton Avenue, and, by Burbank in front of just a little bodega there. So, and I was talking to him, and I remember seeing something in the corner of my eye, and I looked back to the back window, and there was already a guy right there with a gun pointed at me. So, and I just remember thinking, this is a huge handgun pointed right at me. He's like literally almost to the car at this point. And so I just closed my eyes because I was like, someone's not going to be pointing a gun that close to you if they're not going to shoot you. So, and, the shots went off, and that's just kind of in those times, like, you just know, like I before I opened my eyes, I really kind of knew he was dead. I mean, he probably shot off 6 or 7 rounds.
What kind of gun was it? You remember?
They didn't end up telling me. I guess I didn't end up having to testify or anything, so they didn't end up telling me, but I'm sure, can find out. But it was a bigger handgun. I thought it was bigger than a normal handgun. I don't know much, too much about it, but, and because of that, it was shot at close range. My, injuries or the gunshot wounds weren't, complicated, or they didn't have to really do anything. It was actually better for me in that case. But because I was pregnant at that time, 8 months pregnant, and I was sitting in a car, right? Luckily, I was smaller because he shot me from behind, and somehow it didn't hit my stomach. It hit my leg.
So let me ask you this. He walks up to the car. He doesn't say nothing. He just walks up and starts shooting.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're in a relationship with Walt. Did you know if he had any beef, any issues?
To me at that point, no. I mean, he didn't have any major problems with anybody. I guess that, what it turns out was that the people in that area were really, strict about no one else selling drugs in that area. And he didn't, but they thought that he did. And there was a couple times he was with another group that they came up to him and said, don't sell in this area. And he didn't think about that of it because he wasn't really selling. So in that area or whatever. But.
So you feel like he was shot pretty much for no reason? Oh,
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think that there's other things to the story that may never be told. And at that time, my first thought is why, why are we getting, shot? And so that's why I just kept kind of just screaming, like why? Because I wasn't afraid that they were going to keep shooting at me. I mean, I figured if they're shooting at me in broad daylight, they ran off. They're not going to come back, to risk anything. So I was really just upset, about what happened to him.
This is 11 o'clock in the morning. They walk up and shoot you in broad daylight.
Yeah, and there's lots of people around, so.
They don't say anything. They just walk up and unload. And Walt doesn't have a weapon on him, so he can't return any type of fire or nothing.
Yeah, and they shoot him in the back of the head. They don't even give him, a chance. And he doesn't, he didn't have beef like that with anybody, so.
So when he's shot, obviously he's shot in the back of the head. You think 5 or 6 shots they hit him with, right?
Yeah, so he ended up getting shot in the neck and in his hand. So I think he may have, like I said, I closed my eyes when they went off because he was right there. So I think he may have put his hand up or something because they got him right in the hand. I think they ended up coming right into his window and shooting him. So he got shot in the neck and the hand and the back of the head and maybe somewhere else.
How many shooters? 2?
Yeah, it was one shooter, but someone else was involved in the, as they say, the order of the shot or the order of the hit of him. But
when you see the guy walking up on the car, you don't yell to Walt like, "Hey, drive!" Nothing.
No, I mean, I guess there were people in the back seat that I guess they, kind of got up and ran. He was closer to me than I am to you. Yeah. So and the gun's point, it's all I see is the end of that barrel. So there's nothing I could have done.
So there's people in the back seat. They jump out of the car and run when they see what's going on?
Yeah, by the time I looked around, the guy was behind me. I don't even know where he went. He's gone so fast. I'm like, okay.
I don't want to come across as insensitive or anything, but I want to know kind of the details of what you were thinking. You're shot. Do you look down and know that you're bleeding? Do you feel the pain?
Yeah, I didn't feel... So I looked down because I knew he was aiming at that area when I saw him. So I looked down and I saw that I was shot in the leg. I didn't feel anything at that point. I was just I was just crushed because now I'm like, my whole world's like, what just happened? Like, I know he's dead. I mean, he just got, I mean, look, I just know, you just know those things, I guess. And yeah, I don't even, I was just trying, I just remember I kept saying, when the cops and the ambulance people came, I just kept going, no, like just saying that, and they were trying to talk to me, and I just didn't care. Like, it was just that, like, kind of saying no enough times would make it stop.
So, I mean, do you look over at him? Do you see him laying there, shot, bleeding?
Yeah, and I don't want to, go too much, too much longer. But there's a lot of messed up things that happen even after that. Like, there was a bullet lodged in the steering wheel, so the steering wheel went past me, hit the steering wheel, so the horn was blaring, and he somehow, he gets his chains taken off of him while he's dead. He gets everything, all of his stuff taken from when I went back to our apartment the next day. All of his stuff was gone.
Wow. Shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very seldom that I'm stuck for words, but just listening to that, right? And like I said, a girl from the suburbs, you're in the city, you're addicted. You end up with this guy. You end up shot. He ends up shot and dies. And eventually, I know that the people I believe were convicted, sentenced to 20 to life, 25 to life, right?
Yeah. So eventually they were, because of another situation, they got nailed down for it. But
They weren't convicted of killing Walt?
I think they were. They were convicted of it. Both of them might have been.
So really what happens is a whole bunch of people lose their lives, right? That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
Over nothing. Over nonsense.
Yeah.
So now them guys are serving 25 to life, and they have to sit back and think like, damn, we killed that dude, and he wasn't even selling drugs in the neighborhood that we told him not to sell drugs in, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I never really ended up talking to them obviously about it, but I wonder, like, really, they really did kill him for no reason. And now the guy who did it, the guy who ordered the hit and the guy who actually did it, I remember looking at him when he was, when he was there, and he looked scared. I mean, yeah, if you're gonna go shoot somebody in broad daylight, I think he might be scared.
No mask on, nothing.
No, I think he had a hood on, maybe. I don't.
Unbelievable. And now there's a little girl that's growing up without her real father, right?
Yeah, and that's the sad thing. It took me a long time to get over it, but with time I've healed, so it's still more raw almost than it used to be, but I've healed in a way where it's not something I think about constantly. But I feel like for her now, she is the one experiencing the pain of it.
I mean, it's sad. So many little girls grow up without a father, and I believe that every little girl's first hero in life is their dad, right? I believe that 100%. I know that you have a new relationship and you're kind of doing better than you were doing back then, and this gentleman is actually raising your daughter with you, right?
Yeah, and I do, like you said, you're a hero. My dad was always my hero. I think especially with girls, I feel like that's their dad, and she grew up never having one, not even knowing what dad really meant, because I raised her by myself at first, and now my fiance is I have a 1-year-old with him right now, and he is helping me with her, and at least so she has somebody, because I think it's hard having one parent, but it's hard having no parents.
So there has to be kind of like a family structure, right? What is it that keeps you doing the right thing? What motivates you to do the right thing, to stay sober?
Definitely my girls. I don't want them to not have a mom. I know that the statistics of people with this disease is not good, and it's something that I have to fight for every day. I think that there are young people out there. Some of the really young ones are really naive to thinking this stuff won't happen to them, or they won't get addicted to drugs. Like, they think, oh, I would never be addicted to drugs. I've heard them say these things and thinking, I don't even think I was that naive back then. So yeah, I really would love to, even if it's making a difference in one person's life. Like, this disease is just, I just think it's so evil that the devil's behind it. It's just killing everybody one way or another. So.
Sam, you could be one shot away from those two little girls growing up without a mom, right?
Yeah. And I really need to sit with that all the time, because, my thinking gets, I I just don't always think in the right way, and then all of a sudden it's too late.
Have there been times where you felt like you were going to relapse and you did something, you went and looked in the mirror and said, don't do this?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's not, just the violence that ended up happening. Like I have, ended up with extreme health issues. I mean, these are the other things that, you do to yourself. I ended up with a blood infection that was days away from being killed by, and was in the hospital for almost 2 months because of, and I remember looking in the mirror and really, thinking like, what am I doing to myself,
Yeah. So what is it that motivates you today?
I really want to be the person that I always could have been. I want to be a good role model. I can't even imagine like what life I give them if I'm gone. And I want to give my family some peace, like my father, and have some success stories, because I think there's so many horror stories out there.
You've been in the gully, you've been in the gutter. Mm-hmm. What would you tell a young girl that's maybe on the wrong path, that, she's out there getting high, she's getting ready to be out there on the street, she's running out of the little savings that she had, she's 21 years old. What message would you give her?
Yeah, I would say, when I was younger, I made so many bad decisions. I look back and be like, what was I thinking? Like, this is, like, I'm an idiot. Like, I look back at thinking, like, could someone have spoken to me to make a difference? I don't know. That's why I think that I would love to be able to help even a few people. But, yeah, I would tell them that, it's very, very, like, first off, with just addiction, you're going to end up dead, in prison, or insane. Right there, even without all these other things that happen to you, it's not good. And with getting high, you don't get high. There's nothing good about it, even when you're, high. Maybe you don't feel for a little bit, but, so I really, feel bad for these women that are just starting. I would, love to have them not have this story, or not have to go through some of those things.
I can tell. Just talking to you, you're shaking, you're a little nervous. Obviously this, had some effect on your life, on your daily life. Mm-hmm. What are you doing now? Because I know the viewers are going to be watching. Like, what is Sam doing in her life now?
So I'm in sales, more in real estate, and I'm trying to, create my own business with that. That's what you have to do in real estate. But, I have the girls, and I want to give them this, the sports life that my father did. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. So I can have that time with them, and I just can't, I can't be both people. So I just have to get, further and further away.
Okay. What makes you happy?
I think, a lot of time with your kids always makes you happy. Laughing. I think, overcoming, adversity. I think the one good thing from it is that you can grow into a much different, better person if you try hard enough. So, so I still, it's hard with, we always have bad days, but, I think overall it's worth it to put it, give it everything that you have.
Well, I'm going to get ready to close the show. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
No, I think I'm good, Chad. Thank you.
Well, I just want to tell you that I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, your experience. I hope that it does help someone. There is someone out there that's going to watch this video and say, you know what? Maybe I need to try to make the right choice. Maybe today's the day that I call my father and say, I'm done. I want to go to rehab. I want some help. Because there's so many people out there that want help, and then they feel like they're down on the bottom. They can't call home anymore, and they're embarrassed to call their dad. And then what? That next shot is the one that takes their life. And then they never have the opportunity to say, Dad, I love you. They never have the opportunity to hug their daughter. They never have the opportunity to help their daughter with their homework, or to be out there cheering her on when she's 9 years old playing soccer. And I really hope that you think about those things every single day.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. The other really important part to this is that we hurt our family. Like, it's not just us that's living this life. It's our family living this life, and they can't do a thing about it. Imagine sitting on the sidelines, wanting your kid to win the football game, but you can't do anything about it. it's just you're just sitting on the sidelines watching this, and you can't do a thing about it. It's, I'm sure, an awful,
Or
feeling.
how about the kid that looks on the sidelines and their mother's not there, or the kid that looks on the sideline and their father's not there because they passed away or because they were murdered. So those are the things that people should think about. Just tell people, if you like what we're doing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. With respect, until tomorrow, we're out.
Mm-hmm.